It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof. Her beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to a kitchen chair. She broke your throat. She cut your hair. And from your lips she drew the hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Hello, I'm Charles Serco, and I'm here tonight to talk about Karen Spang, the former publisher and owner of the Citizen newspaper. I first met Karen back in 1986 when I was hired on by her at the Citizen, and little did I know at the time that she was a rarity in the journalism field. At the time, she was only one of two, I'm pretty sure about this, women who were publishers of newspapers. And she stood out in many, many ways. She came from a newspaper family. Her father, Joseph, bought the paper in the 1930s during the height of the Depression. And he managed to survive the Depression and to grow the paper into quite a success. After Joe died, his wife, Frances, took over. And sometime in the 1980s, Karen took over from her mother. And Karen, in this era, did a number of things. She invested in the paper. She invested in hard-hitting reporting, and she did some traveling as well. In the 1980s, she went over to Poland when Pope John Paul II, in 1987, made one of his numerous trips there, and it was a very important trip. It's at that time that Karen witnessed the Pope talking about and supporting the Solidarity movement. It was also under her guidance that the Citizen staff went on to win numerous awards in various journalism competitions. And she was the first female to be the president of the Michigan Press Association. She was also one of the first females to become a member of the Hamtramck Rotary. And she loved being involved in the community and especially giving a helping hand to many students. Some of the people who worked with Karen, who went on to into other roles in journalism, one of them was Keely Wygonik, who remembers her first day on the job that Karen burst into the newsroom, grabbed a notebook, and said, "Let's go." Apparently there was a big fire in the city, and she wanted to be part of the coverage, and that was part of Karen's spirit and nose for news too. Another reporter who worked under Karen, Walter Wasek, also had high praise. He said, "Karen is one of the last of an increasingly rare breed of newspaper publishers, someone with a journalism background who understood journalists and the real value of their job. She had keen eyes and ears for news and never backed down from a potentially controversial story." Karen indeed never backed down, and many of the stories that we covered were politically unpopular or caused some backlash against her in the paper, but such was her commitment to the city and to journalism. In 2002, she retired to Traverse City, and the paper lasted for just a few more years until 2009, when the paper should have been celebrating its 75th anniversary, but due to economic situations, the paper closed. It was a very sad note. Also, unfortunately, for the last 14 years of her life, she battled cancer.
When Greg asked me to say a few words. I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, well, why don't you just tell us what you've been doing since you retired? And we communicated a little more, and finally we sort of finalized the topic down to what is the meaning of life. Of course, he only gave me 5 minutes, so here we go. The meaning of life and what I've been doing on my summer vacation. I'd like to say, first of all, that after I finished raising my 2 wonderful children, Ellen and Joseph Cargill Spang, I then went into phase 2 of my life, and that was when I devoted 20-some years to the citizen and to the people of Hamtramck. You. From time to time, an odd thought would pop into my head. Did I ever really have a life before this? And the next question was, and is there a life after Hamtramck? Well, I kind of knew the answer to the first part of that question because, of course, I had raised children and done a lot of things. But as for the latter half of the question, I just kept putting that off. Life after Hamtramck, don't need to worry about that. Little did I know in 1999 that I was about to confront that question head on. That was the year that cancer struck me, and it struck hard. And when I emerged from that illness, grateful to God and grateful to all the wonderful people who prayed for me, and I can't tell you how many there were. Bless you all. When I emerged from that, I knew it was time to move on. It was time for phase 3 of my life. And in my case, that means grandmotherhood. See me later, I got pictures. So I moved to Traverse City, which is where my grandchildren live, so that I could be with them. And I've come back to tell you that there is an answer to the question about life after Hamtramck. And it surprises the heck out of me. Yes, there still is life outside of Hamtramck. But it's not nearly as exciting. It's not nearly as aggravating or stressful either. But I miss Hamtramck terribly. And I miss all of you. I became involved with the library. Traverse City has a wonderful library, and one of their programs that I think is very nice is that every year a committee selects one book, and they have a project called Traverse City Reads, and they put up banners all over the city promoting that book, and throughout the year everybody can read the book, and there are lots of copies at the library, etc. And then starting in January, there are discussion groups all over the city at all different levels so people can get together and talk about what they read. And I've really enjoyed that a lot. If you'd like to know what I've accomplished in the years that I've been gone, I'd like to say that I wrote the great American novel, but I didn't. I did, however, discover the joy of setting up bird feeders and learning how to identify songbirds. I relearned how to ride a bike, and yes, you can do that too. I learned that it's actually fun to spend a day on a boat in Traverse Bay. It is delightful. And I learned to rejoice in nature's beauty, something that I'm afraid in the rush of running a business and being involved in the community, you sometimes forget. And I learned 100 different ways to cook with cherries. I miss you very much. Hamtramck is truly home in more ways than you can imagine. My mother, father, and I have poured our sweat, blood, and tears into this sacred ground. I know, as each of them left this earth, and as I leave this earth someday, there will be no regrets, only deep affection for this fabulous community. In the end, my lesson on the meaning of life is this: it's not where you are, but who you are that counts.
She died in September at the age of 69. She'll be fondly remembered and deeply missed in this community.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.